Hello guys, so in this video we'll be seeing exception handling in Java. Okay, so let's start with introduction. So basically, why do we need to use exceptions in Java? So in Java, basically exceptions allows us to handle the errors gracefully, and by errors here means the errors or exceptions that occur at the runtime while your code is getting executed. And let's say you encountered a divisible by zero exception. That means you try to divide a number by an input and that input is somehow zero, then you will get an error. And if you by default you do not handle those, so then your application will crash. Hence we needed the exceptions to gracefully handle such errors that occur at runtime. Okay, so let's see how we can implement this, how we can use those exceptions. Okay, so there are basically 5 important keywords: try, catch, throw, throws, and finally. We'll see example of each and how we can use those. Okay, so let's start with try catch first. Okay, so whatever code we think that can throw an exception at runtime, we wrap that code with the try. We surround that code with the try. Okay, so let's see an example. This is the basic example. So we have our main function and we have printed starting execution, and at the end of the function we have printed ending execution. So if we got the only first log starting execution, not the ending execution, that means our code is getting crashed. Okay, so let's see one piece of code: int a equals to 0 and b equals to 10 by a. So what will happen now? This code will get the error at runtime divided by 0. Okay, let's see. As you can see, this code get the exception divided by 0, and we have got the starting execution but not the ending execution. That means our application crashed at runtime due to this error code. Okay, so how we can achieve that our code gets completed executed? Our code should execute completely and our application should not crash. So what we do in such cases, we wrap that code with a try and we put the catch block that this exception can occur in the code which is inside the try. Okay, so divide by 0 is an arithmetic exception. Okay, so now let's run it again, and as you see, just 1 minute. Yeah, I think the file was not saved. As you see, we have got the log starting execution, ending execution, and inside this we got the exception. So what happens here, actually we got the log starting execution, then this function try catch demo is called, this line got executed 14, it throws the exception, the flow goes inside the catch block. So basically what happens is, when the exception is thrown inside the try block, the flow of execution breaks from at that line. So assume this was written here. So this code will not execute it. Let me just show you again. Here is not printed because exception occurred at line 14. Then the flow of code automatically goes here inside the catch block. Then we have seen this printing error exception message. This was written by us. Then the exception message, and the part in red is coming via this stack trace. This is actually helpful when you are working on the real world projects. Multiple files, multiple functions. So a file is calling b file. Then there are multiple functions, so you get to know from where actually exception is coming and it's getting called by which function. Okay, this is a basic example of try catch. Now let's see a bit complicated. So this is only 2 lines, so it can only throw arithmetic exception, but this code here can throw arithmetic exception, array index out of bound exception. So array index out of bound exception is an exception when you try to access an element at index of an array which does not exist. So what we have done here is we have created an array of 2 index and we have tried to access the third index, which is the position of 2. So we'll run it. So it throws arithmetic exception. Okay, just 1 minute. Yeah, now it will work. So it throws array index out of bound exception with message 2. Message means in array index out of bound, the message represents the index which throws the exception. Okay, moving forward, one more thing I would like to tell here. So when you are catching multiple exceptions, please remember at the top there should always be specific exceptions or these subclasses, and at the bottom there should be generic or in the parent classes. So let's say see at the line 54, the arithmetic exception comes first, then the exception class comes. What would have happened if I have written here arithmetic exception and at the top it's written exception? So what would happen is this code throws the compile time error, that unreachable code block. Why this is unreachable catch block? Whatever exception occurs here, it will anyways get caught inside the catch block because exception is the parent class. Okay, and if all exception will catch inside this catch block, why do we need this catch block? This code will never get called, then this becomes the unreachable code, and unreachable code is an compile time error in Java. Okay, so remember this, and this is one of the most common interview questions for exceptions. Okay, moving forward, we have seen the try catch. Now before understanding throws and finally let's understand some theory about exceptions, which is important before moving forward. Okay, so basically the exceptions are of two types: checked exceptions and unchecked exceptions. Checked exception, these are the kind of exceptions that compiler mandates us to handle them while runtime. So if Java knows that this piece of code can throw a checked exception, then it's a mandate on us to handle those exceptions, otherwise that will be a compile time error. And I'll tell you how to handle. So basically try catch is one of the way you handle the exception. There is one more way, we'll see later. Okay, so if a piece of code can throw IO exception, just trap that code with try catch, otherwise that code will throw in compile time error. Second type of exceptions are unchecked exceptions. These are the exceptions that compiler does not check at the runtime, at the compile time. So divide by 0. If we would have not surrounded that code with try catch, it was also running. At least it was also compiling, it throws an error at the runtime, but not at compile time. Okay, so this is the difference between checked exceptions and unchecked exceptions. Moving forward, this is also important, the class hierarchy. So I have told you the exception is the parent class of the arithmetic, so it's written here. So at the top we have the throwable class, then we have the two subclasses, exception and error. We are not looking error in this video, we will see another video for error. Exception is the class, then we have child classes. Some are checked exceptions, some are unchecked exceptions. So for checked exceptions we have IO exception, SQL exception, class not found exception. For unchecked exception we have the parent class runtime exception, then the subclasses null pointer, array index, out of bound, arithmetic, and we can also anyways see this here. So arithmetic exception, this is a code of Java now. Arithmetic exceptions is extending the runtime exception, which is mentioned here. Arithmetic exception parent is runtime. When we click on runtime, we see runtime parent is exception, runtime parent is exception, and when we click on exceptions, we see its parent is throwable. So whenever you have any doubt around hierarchy and all, you can anyways always refer the Java code. Okay. Moving back to an example, now we'll see the throw code. Okay. So in the previous case we have seen our code was throwing an exception. Divide by 0 is an error, so which is throwing an exception. But let's say you want to throw the exception on some cases. Let's say in this example, here we are calling a function throw demo and we are passing a parameter integer as length. Now if the length is 0, we want to throw an exception. So how can we do? We can use the keyword throw, new, and exception. So we have thrown throw new null pointer exception or throw new exception. Okay, so if I simply run it, it prints the starting execution, then it throws the null pointer exception at line 13. This is line 13. Okay, this is pretty simple, right? But throw is all about this only. Whenever you feel that piece of code should throw an exception, you simply throw new exception. It could be parent class, child class, whatever. But let's say consider this case only. If the length is 0, you want to throw a custom exception. You want to create your own exception, let's say custom length exception, and you want to throw that. So what we have done is we have created our own custom length exception. Let's see the body. So I've told you there are two types of exception: checked exception, unchecked exception. This is the unchecked exception because we have extended the runtime exception. We could also create custom length exception, extends exception, then it becomes the checked exception. Okay, and we have created few constructors here. By default it will print invalid length. If we want to print the length, if we want to print an exception message of our own, we have created that constructor also, and they are two same constructor with another parameter throwable. We'll see this also in a minute. Okay, So I'll simply run it. One more thing, this code is not giving any compile time error, not giving any compile time error, and we have not handled it. Why? Because this is an unchecked exception. Another exception is we have created is this is custom len 2, which is extending checked exception. Hence it becomes a checked exceptions now. Okay, so by default this code is giving an error that unhandled type of exception, because custom length 2 exception is getting thrown and it needs to be handled. And we have seen that checked exceptions, if not handled, will give an compile time error. Okay, so how we can solve it? One way is obviously we have seen we can surround it with try catch block and it's gone. Okay, but we'll see another way later. Okay, so we'll simply run the throw demo 2 to tell you about the custom length exception. And as you can see, now the custom length exception is thrown with the message length should be greater than 0. It's the custom message that can be, you can send your any message. Okay, and we can simply run through demo 5, which will throw the checked exception. Okay, I'll just want to show one more. So we have seen there are 4 constructors. One is the default message, one is the message we have sent, another one is the message with a throwable, basically with an exception object. Throwable is a parent class of exception. Okay, so see this through demo 3. What is happening here? We'll run it. So it print starting execution. It's throwing the array index out of bound exception, but inside array index out of bound exception we have thrown a new custom exception. So as you can see, it's first throwing a custom exception, and since we have passed this e here, which is then instance of exception array index out of bound exception, it's then printing the stack trace of this. Okay, this is just to show you an example. Consider it whenever some exception throws, whenever some exception is getting thrown and you want to handle it in some other way, which, so I'll give you an example. Let's say you're creating a web application. Okay, whenever an exception occurs, you want to throw an exception which is causing a 404 status code. So let's say a null pointer exception is occur. You have created a resource not found exception. So whenever a null pointer exception occurs, you are throw new resource not found exception, which then is throwing the 404 status code. Okay. Moving forward, so this is all about throw. So we have seen this method throw demo 5. One way of handling is surrounding with try catch. Another way is simply just throws this exception. So while we are creating the body of the function, we simply define throw this exception. So this is saying this function can throw custom length exception to the function which is calling it. Now it's that function's responsibility how they are handling it. Okay, this is all about throws, and you can throw multiple throws, a comma b comma c. Okay, moving forward to our PPT, we have seen throws. Now the last thing is finally. Finally is the code block which gets executed every time, whether the exception occurs or it does not occur. Okay, so let's see this finally demo function. We'll run it. Output is inside exception, starting execution, ending execution, inside finally. We'll see the code. So the code does not flow inside catch because the exception does not occur. So finally block getting executed. Okay. Now let's run it when the exception is occurring. It's starting execution, ending execution. Inside this, it shows inside exception first and then inside finally. So catch is getting called, then finally is getting called. This is mainly useful in cases such as, let's say you are opened a MySQL connection or opened a new file descriptor, and then while processing some error occurred, some null pointer occurred, or some arithmetic exception occurred, or some array index out of bound occurred, and if your code is not handling those exceptions, what would happen? Those connections will remain open forever, and after a time it will cause memory leak. Okay, so such cases can be handled by finally. So you close those connections, close those file descriptors in finally. Even if the exception does not occur, they will get closed in finally. As we have seen, finally will always get executed. Okay, I hope you find this video useful. If there are any doubts or feedback, please share in the comments. Thank you.